Good afternoon, everyone. Time for episode 3 of The Last Admiral, part 3 of the Dwarahim Staff Saga. Just a note from my last episode. I mentioned that Wong, who was an abbot of the temple in my book, was originally the founder of Lum Kung Fu. I was incorrect. He's the founder of the Northern Praying Mantis system of Kung Fu in China. So he's the original inventor and creator of Northern Praying Mantis. Li Quan-Shan was the master and founder of Lum. So I'm sorry for that mistake. I knew the correct nature or the incorrect nature of it, but I'm not sure why I made that mistake. Anyway, so I'm voicing the retraction now. Okay, without ado, we'll begin episode 3. Top of page 26, the chapter entitled Noon. Okay. The hot bath had done little to calm Vlad's excitement. He could not wait to tell his father the good news, but his inner sense told him that this meeting was beyond the norm. Looking through his closet, he decided to wear dress pants and a jacket. Around his white shirt, he wrapped his student's sash of silver. Pulling on his best pair of boots, he was careful to arrive early. He thought to knock before entering, but he knew that there was no need. "Come and sit," Aklon bid. "Yes, father," he replied. "I see that you have received your acceptance letter." "Yes," Vlad answered. "Excellent. Then all of our training has begun to bear fruit. You must have read my mind." Aklon had been pacing. He stopped. Turning to face his son, he clasped his hands behind the small of his back. He was every inch a gentleman. Looking fondly at his son, he said, "Nothing could be further from the truth, my son. Despite your misgivings, I had nothing to do with your acceptance. I merely assumed that you would succeed based on your superior merits alone. Accept the nomination of your own free will, and sore tests await you. Prevail, and many opportunities will present themselves. Even if you should fail, you will still learn something. I will not disappoint you, father. You never could, Vlad. You are my son." Striding to the table, he opened an ornate case. Within its confines rested a sword in its scabbard. Lifting it reverently, he instructed, "Many unforeseen things will happen. But unless you are dead, I know that you will not fail save for treachery. The academy training is the best in this world, and most who begin will never make it to graduation day. What divides the winners from the losers is not necessarily who is the best or the brightest, but who can persevere for the longest time without quitting. Remember that, and as long as your will remains strong, nothing can stand in your way." "I will, father." Vlad stood nearby, with one hand resting on the back of a chair. His emotions were uncertain and filled with unfamiliar turmoil. Aklon continued, "Some of your fellow students will fail due to injury. There is no dishonor in that. Remember who they are. Make sure that they remember you as a friend when they needed one. Many years from now, you may be in need of their help. Our futures are uncertain at best, and the greatest leaders measure their power with untrustworthy alliances. Measure their power with trustworthy alliances. Always consider the setchboard and make your sacrifices wisely." "I understand, father." Aklon became more serious and declared, "Now we must conduct the most serious business of our lives. 3 letters arrived today. Your acceptance letters and my orders. High Council calls the 11th to duty. I must leave before sunset." Vlad could see the tension in his father's posture, the tightness in the brow above his eyes. "What worries you, father?" "The time has finally come for us to move forward with our plans." "Oh," Vlad replied. "My orders are bogus," Aklon asserted. "They are clearly a prelude to the decommissioning of my fleet, at the very least. But I fear that the Queen intends no less than our destruction. My orders command me to divide the fleet in two, and lead one contingent to rendezvous with a convoy of supply ships en route to our campaign in the Shattered Isles. Our remaining strength is to remain here, in defense of Shang Tsung. So you naturally suspect that it's a trap. Naturally, Aklon agreed. Chuckling, his composure swiftly returned. Much like your grandfather, I may not return. But you are the sea fox, the divine hand of Dragonia, whom no trap has ever ensnared. No, Vlad, I am but a man. Dark Alpha though we may be, we are not immortal, and once dead, we are as dead as any. I don't want you to go away again. Enough, Aklon said, just as moved himself, but with the heavy duty of parenthood calling on him to remain strong for his son. His voice softened as he continued, Let us imagine that I will return, and that these papers which I have penned are merely a precaution. I have rewritten my will, naming you the principal heir to the estate. Should you pass as well, then the house will go to your brother Derek. Read it carefully, Vlad, and then sign your name to it. Vlad read it, saddened and moved by his father's faith in him. His hand shook as he took up the quill. Consider my words carefully, Aklon urged. Commanding this house is a tremendous responsibility. It will be years before you realize just how much of a burden it can be. At 16, you have only begun to climb the ladder to adulthood, but by our laws, you have every right to lead. Vlad signed the will. Aklon handed him the letter containing his remaining wishes. See to it that my desires are carried out to the letter. It is more important than you know. I will. Excellent. Then I have no more need of this. Removing the signet ring from his finger, he placed it in his son's outstretched hand. Care for it, until my return, or until you should pass it on to your own rightful heir. You act as if our fate is sealed. Perhaps the sage was right when he told me that fate and free will occur simultaneously, but only the gods know if I shall return or not. Guard the ring well, Vlad. It is our oldest family relic, passed down from father to son for 10,000 years. I will, father. Reaching into his shirt pocket, he withdrew another ring, apparently identical to the one that Vlad held, and said, My jeweler constructed this flawless duplicate for this very occasion. Powerful spells of protection lace your ring, unlike this one, which is a simple fake. It is best that we keep this a secret between ourselves. No one outside of our family must know that you hold the true ring. And no one will, Vlad swore. Aklon then lifted his sword from its case with reverence. This, too, I leave to you. Kneel. Vlad knelt, and so, too, did his father before him. Beside them stood the grand dining table, and behind them a warm fire burned in the fireplace. You know this sword well, Aklon began. He is Shinpa-Grul, my trusted friend, and now it is your time to wield him. Forged by the immortal bladesmith Zumori Shumiku from a single meteorite, the ally of Shinpa-Grul's blade, from its tip to its tang, and including the guard, does not exist anywhere else on Tempest. Against all inferior metals, it is indestructible. The necromancer Tegunagoth enchanted it for your grandfather 357 years ago. Shinpa-Grul's edge will never dull, even if you were to strike it against a pillar of adamantine. While he is in your hands, or upon your waist, you will never grow tired in battle, nor fail to sense an enemy at your back. If your technique is perfect, he will join you in a perfect cut, cleaving anything in your path. All these powers and more are available to the rightful wielder of the sword. But the greatest gift that Tegunagoth laid upon it was love, for the sword's heart is born of Lu Sharon blood. Drawing the blade, Aklon pulled a handkerchief from his breast pocket. Dropping it, the cloth passed over the blade as if there was nothing there, only tumble and twist to the earth in two equal halves. He then gripped the blade with his other hand and pulled. The sword came free, and left no mark upon it at all. Holding up his uninjured hand, he instructed, "Ordinary swords are as much a danger to the wielder as to one's enemy. Not so Shinpa-Grul. He will never cut flesh born of our blood. To my knowledge, he is the greatest sword ever created in this world. Will you wield him with courage and honor?" "I swear it." "Shinpa-Grul," Aklon bequeathed, "I give you now to my son, Vlad. He will wield you well." Sheathing the sword, he extended his arms at chest height, with its hilt facing left, the sword's blade positioned vertically, as it was double-edged. Vlad gripped it, grasping the scabbard between his father's hands. Their eyes locked, and then the true test began. Shinpa-Grul. "He is not ready, my son," Shinpa asserted. "Your need is greater." "He is ready," Aklon answered. "Wraith has honed his fencing skills to a razor's edge. Your need will be greater, I have foreseen it. But the future depends on him, and you won't be able to help him from the bottom of the sea." The sword shook in its scabbard, its manner of grumbling. "Perhaps you are right, but I still say that he is not ready." "Grandfather?" Vlad asked in wonder. "Of course, you silly boy. The sword needed a soul, and my body was beyond saving. Tegonagoth performed the final spells perfectly, binding the last of my life's blood to this blade. Then you have been here all of my life," Vlad realized, "and I never knew it." "Ah," Theron said, "I have watched over you and your father all of your lives. I now see the world the way that a ghost might see it, past and present overlapping, faded shells of buildings and trees long since fallen into dust, and possible futures, fleeting and then gone. The magic holds me here until the end of time, or the blade's destruction, whichever comes first. Wield me or wear me, in which case I am only aware of the present. I see what you see and more, as the world sees you from the outside." "Then it is time for the test," Aklon reasoned. "What test?" Vlad asked. "A test of your will," Shimpa instructed. "And if you fail, then I shall sail on to doom with your father." "Prepare your mind," Aklon warned, for the attack had already begun. Decades of battle with the Sentients had transformed Theron's already gifted mind, so deeply, in fact, that he had passed his gifts on to his son and grandson. Vlad battled for his life against two gifted telepaths. There was no time to consider how far that this fight would go. He had dueled with his father for endless hours in this same fashion, but never had the attack been so ruthless, so painful, or so sudden. He raised barriers in his mind, castle walls thick and strong. They shattered them. He entered a maze of his mind's own creation and hid himself well. An assault against his pain centers destroyed his creation. He was naked, alone and in the dark, with no place left to hide. There was no defense left save for attack. His soul screamed, and his attackers fell back. He made himself invisible to them and struck again. Searching the minds that tested him, he found their weaknesses and revealed them. Trying to shut him out proved impossible. The doorways that he opened within their minds revealed their inner spirits to them. He knew how to crush them. He knew then that he was the victor. They laughed. "Well done." Shinpa, whose spirit was Theron's, chuckled. "I wasn't really looking forward to spending an eternity 1,000 leagues under the sea, after all." "Then it is settled," Aklon affirmed. "You will look after him." "Of course," Shinpa said, "but we are not done yet. He must see what we have seen." Lower your defenses, Vlad, Aklon instructed. Open the windows of your mind. Old memories flooded his thoughts. Witnessing his father's birth through Theron's own eyes, he relived their childhood, his schooling and his journeys. He experienced his losses and his loves, his victories and defeats. He felt his heartache and hardship as he watched his companions fall in countless battles. He heard the words of the Coven's prophecy. He lived as his grandfather did through the Queen's endless scheming and treachery that eventually led to his demise. And on the previous page, the footnote relates where I took words from Jules Verne. This is my honorific tribute to my favorite author, Jules Verne. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, an underwater tour of the world, published in 1870. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So I always enjoyed Jules Verne. Read and reread most of his books several times. Okay. So we'll continue with the next episode 4 at the top of page 33. And we'll continue with Shinpa-Grul, the sword, the grandfather of Vlad, the father of Aklon, and their preparation for Aklon's journey. Okay, thank you and have a great afternoon. I hope you enjoyed it.